The midnight air in Old Timber was thick with the smell of decay and broken dreams. I was under the hood of my rusted Ford pickup, grease-coating my knuckles, when I heard voices cutting through the silence from my own house. My 16-year-old daughter Emma's voice carried that particular venom only teenagers could master. "Maybe if you weren't such a loser, Dad, Mom wouldn't need to get what she wants from Uncle Jamie. At least he's a real man." I froze, wrench in hand, as the words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Uncle Jamie, my younger brother, the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, who'd been flirting with my wife Sarah since the day I introduced them 5 years ago. Let me paint you a picture of Old Timber, Maine, population 3,847 on a good day, where everyone knows everyone's business before you know it yourself. The old lumber mill shut down 3 years back, leaving half the town unemployed and the other half pretending they weren't next. Main Street looked like a mouth with half its teeth knocked out, empty storefronts, peeling paint, and one bar called Murphy's where dreams went to die. I'd grown up here, married my high school sweetheart Sarah, and somehow convinced myself we could build something decent in this dying town. I ran a small construction business, fixing what was left of people's hopes one rotted board at a time. Sarah worked at the only law office in town, handling divorces and property disputes for people who couldn't afford to leave. But tonight, everything I thought I knew was crumbling faster than the old mill's foundation. I crept closer to the house, my work boots silent on the gravel driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see Sarah and Emma facing off across our scarred wooden table. Sarah's blonde hair was pulled back in that tight bun she wore when she was stressed, her green eyes flashing with anger. "Don't talk about your father that way," Sarah snapped, but there was something hollow in her voice, like she was reading lines from a script she didn't believe in. "Why not? It's true, isn't it?" Emma shot back, her phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "Uncle Jamie's got his own business, his own house, and he actually pays attention to people. When's the last time Dad took you anywhere nice? When's the last time he made you laugh?" Sarah's face went pale, and I saw something flicker across her features. Guilt, maybe, or fear of being found out. "Emma, that's enough." "I saw the texts, Mom. I saw the pictures." My blood turned to ice water. Pictures. Texts. The pieces were falling into place like dominoes, each one hitting harder than the last. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. 5 years of marriage, 16 years of raising Emma as my own after her biological father walked out. And this was what I got. My brother, my own flesh and blood, had been circling my wife like a vulture, and apparently she'd finally given in. The next morning, I waited until Sarah left for work before I made my move. Her phone was her lifeline, but she'd always been careless with her laptop. I knew her password, Emma's birthday, because Sarah wasn't creative with security. What I found made me want to put my fist through the screen. Months of messages, photos, plans to meet when I was out on job sites. The worst part wasn't even the explicit content. It was the way they talked about me, like I was some obstacle to be worked around, some joke they shared between stolen kisses. "He's so clueless," one of Sarah's messages read. "Sometimes I think he knows but doesn't want to face it." Jamie's response made my vision blur with rage. Poor Danny. Always was too soft for his own good. Remember when we were kids? He'd cry when Dad yelled at him, but he'd still come back for more. Some people are just born to be walked on. I screenshotted everything. Every message, every photo, every cruel joke at my expense. Then I sat back in my kitchen chair and laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming until my throat bled. You want to know what really twisted the knife? The timestamp on the first message. It was from 3 months after Sarah and I got married. 3 months. My brother had been planning this from the beginning, and my wife had been weak enough to fall for it. That evening, I decided to come home early from a job. I told my crew I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't exactly a lie. The sickness in my stomach had been growing all day, feeding on anger and betrayal until it felt like it might consume me whole. I parked down the street from my house and walked the last block, staying in the shadows. Jamie's black Mustang, his pride and joy, the car he'd restored with money borrowed from our parents, was parked in my driveway like he owned the place. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. They felt safe in my own home, secure in the knowledge that I was supposed to be working until 6. I could hear them before I saw them. Sarah's breathless laughter, Jamie's low voice murmuring something that made her giggle like a teenager. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, each step feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. The door was cracked open, and through the gap, I could see them in my bed. My bed. The one Sarah and I had picked out together when we moved in, where we'd made love, where we'd talked about our future, where I'd held her when she cried about her mother's death. Jamie was on top of her, and Sarah's legs were wrapped around his waist like she was trying to pull him deeper. Her head was thrown back in pleasure I hadn't seen from her in months, maybe years. They were so lost in each other they didn't notice me standing there, watching my entire life fall apart. I cleared my throat. They froze like deer in headlights. Sarah's face went from flushed with passion to white with terror in the space of a heartbeat. Jamie rolled off her, scrambling for his clothes with all the dignity of a rat fleeing a sinking ship. "Danny," Sarah gasped, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. "I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Inside, I was screaming, but something cold and calculating had taken over. "Because I'd love to hear how you explain fucking my brother in our bed." Jamie had managed to pull on his jeans and was reaching for his shirt. "Look, man, this isn't how we wanted you to find out." "We?" I stepped into the room, and both of them flinched. "We? How long has there been a we, Jamie?" Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. "Danny, please, just let us explain." 8 months, Jamie said quietly. He'd always been a coward, but at least he was an honest coward. "It's been 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of coming home to Sarah's kisses, 8 months of family dinners where Jamie sat across from me and smiled, 8 months of being the biggest fool in old timber." "Get out," I said. "Danny," Sarah started. "Get out," I roared, and they both scrambled for their clothes like the house was on fire. I stood in my bedroom doorway and watched my wife and my brother flee my home like the cheating cowards they were. When I heard Jamie's Mustang roar to life and disappear down the street, I sat on my bed, on sheets that smelled like betrayal, and tried to figure out what to do next. The answer came to me like a revelation. I was going to tell my parents. They'd be horrified, of course. They'd demand that Jamie end things with Sarah, maybe even cut him off financially. My father had always preached about family loyalty, about how blood was thicker than water. Surely they'd stand by me in this. I drove to my childhood home with righteous anger burning in my chest, ready to finally have someone on my side. I was about to learn just how wrong a man could be. My parents lived in the same house where Jamie and I had grown up, a modest 2-story with peeling white paint and a front porch that sagged under the weight of too many harsh winters. Dad's truck was in the driveway next to Mom's ancient Honda, which meant they were both home. Good. I wanted them both to hear this. I didn't bother knocking. I'd grown up here, and some habits die hard. I found them in the living room, Dad watching the evening news while Mom worked on one of her endless crossword puzzles. They looked up when I walked in, and I could see the guilt written across their faces before I even opened my mouth. They knew. They fucking knew. "Danny," Mom said carefully, setting down her pencil, "we weren't expecting you." "I bet you weren't," I said, standing in the doorway like an unwelcome stranger in the house where I'd taken my first steps. "I just came from home. Found Jamie and Sarah in my bed. Thought you might want to know your golden boy is a home-wrecking piece of shit." Dad muted the television and turned to face me fully. At 62, Robert Mitchell still looked like the mill foreman he'd been for 30 years before the plant closed. Broad shoulders, calloused hands, and eyes that had seen too much disappointment to be surprised by anything. "Sit down, son," he said quietly. "I'll stand. Thanks. I won't be here long." I crossed my arms and waited for the outrage, the demands that Jamie end things immediately, the apologies for raising such a selfish bastard. Instead, Mom sighed like I just told her it was raining. "Danny, honey, we know about Jamie and Sarah," she said gently, like she was explaining something to a child. "We've known for months." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You've known?" "Jamie told us," Dad said. He was torn up about it, really he was. But sometimes these things just happen. You can't help who you fall in love with. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline, for some indication that this was all a sick joke. When none came, I felt something break inside my chest. "Are you fucking kidding me?" I whispered. "Language, Daniel," Mom said automatically. "Language? Language?" I was shouting now, but I didn't care. "My brother is fucking my wife, and you're worried about my language?" Dad stood up, his face hardening. "That's enough. We understand you're upset." "Upset? I'm upset?" I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. "My wife is cheating on me with my brother. My parents have been helping them cover it up, and you think I'm just upset?" "Nobody's covering anything up," Mom said, but she couldn't meet my eyes. We thought it would be better if you heard it from them." "When? When exactly were they planning to tell me? After they got married? After they had kids? When I was dead and buried?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking and the distant sound of traffic on Route 9. Normal sounds from a normal evening in a normal family. But there was nothing normal about this. "Jamie's happy," Dad said finally. happier than I've seen him in years. And Sarah, well, she lights up around him in a way she never did with you. Each word was a knife twist. So that's it? Jamie's happy, so fuck me? It's not like that, Danny, Mom said, reaching out like she wanted to comfort me. I stepped back before she could touch me. We love you both. But Jamie, he's always been more sensitive. He needs more support. More sensitive? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's 31 years old, Mom. When does he stop being your baby and start being a man who steals his brother's wife? He didn't steal anything, Dad snapped. Sarah made her choice. Maybe if you'd been a better husband. Don't. The word came out low and dangerous. Don't you dare put this on me. But Dad was just getting started. When's the last time you took her out somewhere nice? When's the last time you bought her flowers or jewelry or anything that showed you appreciated her? Jamie treats her like a queen. With what money? I shot back. The money you gave him to start his garage? The money you loan him every month when his bills come due? It's easy to play Prince Charming when Mommy and Daddy are footing the bill. Mom's face flushed red. That's not fair, Danny. Jamie's business is just getting started. His business has been just getting started for 3 years. He's 31 and you still pay his car insurance. At least he's trying to build something, Dad said. At least he's not content to just patch other people's problems for the rest of his life. The insult hung in the air like smoke. My construction business, the one I'd built from nothing, the one that actually turned a profit, the one that employed 6 people from our dying town, was just patching other people's problems. I see how it is, I said quietly. Jamie's the success story, and I'm just the disappointment who's standing in the way of true love. That's not what we're saying, Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I looked between them, these 2 people who'd raised me, who'd supposedly loved me, who were now asking me to step aside so my brother could have my wife. What exactly are you saying, then? Dad cleared his throat. We're saying that maybe it's time to let go. Sarah and Jamie, they're good together, they make sense, and you're still young enough to start over. Start over. I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. Start over with what? My wife is leaving me for my brother, my daughter thinks I'm a loser, and my parents are taking their side. What exactly am I starting over with? You'll figure it out, Dad said with the kind of casual confidence that comes from not giving a shit. You always do. I stood there for a long moment, looking at these strangers who shared my DNA. My mother, who'd kissed my scraped knees and cheered at my boxing matches, was now telling me to accept that my wife preferred my brother. My father, who'd taught me to change oil and throw a punch, was suggesting I just walk away from my marriage without a fight. You know what the funny thing is? I said finally. I came here thinking you'd be on my side. I thought family meant something to you. Family does mean something to us, Mom said. That's why we want what's best for everyone. What's best for Jamie, you mean? What's best for the family, Dad corrected. Sometimes that means making sacrifices. My sacrifices, you mean. Always my sacrifices. I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Tell me something. When Jamie came crying to you about fucking my wife, did either of you, even for a second, think about telling him to stop? The silence was answer enough. I thought so. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch that had welcomed me home 1,000 times. Don't call me. Don't come by. Don't pretend you give a shit what happens to me. You made your choice. Danny, wait, Mom called after me, but I was already walking to my truck. As I drove away from my childhood home for what I knew would be the last time, I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest where my heart used to be. My wife was a cheating whore, my brother was a backstabbing snake, and my parents were enablers who'd thrown me under the bus to protect their precious baby boy. Fine. If they wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. But first, I needed to figure out just how deep this betrayal went. I had a feeling I was only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I drove around Old Timber for an hour, my mind racing as the pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. Sarah's late nights at the office, Jamie's sudden financial improvements, the way conversation stopped when I entered rooms, the pitying looks from neighbors I'd attributed to my struggling business. How long had I been the town joke? How many people knew my wife was cheating before I did? I parked outside Murphy's Bar, the only place in town where a man could drink away his sorrows without judgment. The neon sign flickered like a dying heartbeat, casting red shadows across the cracked parking lot. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and broken dreams. Tom Murphy stood behind the bar, polishing glasses with mechanical precision. He'd been my boxing coach back in high school, before a knee injury ended any dreams I had of fighting professionally. Now he served whiskey to men who'd given up on their dreams and listened to their sob stories with the patience of a priest. Danny, he said as I slumped onto a bar stool. You look like someone ran over your dog. Worse, I said. Pour me a double whiskey. Make it the good stuff. Tom's weathered face creased with concern as he poured. Want to talk about it? I knocked back the whiskey and felt it burn all the way down. Found my wife fucking my brother in my bed today. Then went to my parents expecting support and found out they've known for months. Tom whistled low. Jesus, Danny, that's rough. Gets better. Apparently I'm supposed to just step aside and let them be happy together. For the good of the family. I signaled for another drink. Tell me something, Tom. How long has the whole town known? Tom hesitated, which was answer enough. Danny? How long? He poured himself a shot and drank it before answering. Couple months, maybe 3. They weren't exactly subtle about it. Jamie's been buying drinks for the house, talking about how he finally found the woman of his dreams. Sarah's been coming in here with her girlfriends, giggling about her secret romance like she was 16 again. The humiliation burned worse than the whiskey. And nobody thought to tell me? What was I supposed to say? Hey, Danny, your wife's cheating on you with your brother, and half the town's taking bets on when you'll figure it out. People were betting on it? Tom's silence was damning. I finished my second drink and stood up, tossing a 20 on the bar. Thanks for the honesty, Tom. More than I got from my own family. Danny, wait. Tom grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Don't do anything stupid. I know you're hurting, but what? I should just take it? Let them humiliate me and smile while they do it? I pulled free of his grip. I'm done being the good guy, Tom. It's time these bastards learned what happens when you push a man too far. I left Murphy's with a plan forming in my mind. If Sarah and Jamie wanted to play games, I'd show them what a real game looked like. But first, I needed more information. I drove to Sarah's law office, a converted Victorian house on Elm Street that tried to look more prestigious than it was. Her car was still in the parking lot, which meant she was working late, or pretending to work late while she figured out how to spin this disaster in her favor. The building had security cameras, but I knew the blind spots from when I'd installed new gutters last year. I slipped around to the back and used the spare key Sarah kept hidden under a fake rock, because my wife was predictable in all the wrong ways. The office was dark except for the light coming from Sarah's corner office. I could hear her voice through the door, and she wasn't alone. I crept closer, staying in the shadows. Told you this would happen eventually, a woman's voice was saying. Danny's not stupid, just willfully blind. But even he has limits. I recognized the voice. Rebecca Chen, Sarah's best friend and law partner. Rebecca had never liked me, always treating me like I was beneath Sarah's social class. Apparently she'd been more involved in this mess than I'd realized. I know, Sarah said, and I could hear tears in her voice. But I thought we'd have more time. Jamie and I were going to tell him after Christmas, maybe ease him into the idea of a divorce. Ease him into it? Rebecca laughed harshly. Sarah, you've been fucking his brother for 8 months. There's no easing into that kind of betrayal. It's not like I planned this, Sarah snapped. It just happened. Jamie was there when Danny wasn't. He listened when Danny was too busy with work. He made me feel beautiful when Danny barely noticed I existed. I pressed closer to the door, my hands clenched into fists. Oh, please, Rebecca said. Spare me the romantic justification. You cheated because you were bored and Jamie was convenient. At least own it. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice, smaller now. What am I going to do, Becca? Danny looked at me like I was a stranger, like he hated me. Can you blame him? You humiliated him in the worst possible way, and now the whole town knows. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. Look, Sarah, I love you like a sister, but you fucked up. Big time. I know that, Sarah's voice cracked. But I love Jamie. I really do. And he loves me. Love? Rebecca snorted. Jamie loves the idea of taking something that belonged to his brother. You think you're the first woman he's done this with? My blood went cold. What do you mean? Come on, Sarah. You're a smart woman. Jamie's been pulling this shit since high school. Remember Kelly Morrison? She was dating that guy from Bangor when Jamie swooped in. And what about Lisa Chen? No relation, by the way, who was engaged to that teacher from Portland. That's different, Sarah protested, but she sounded uncertain. Is it? Jamie has a pattern, sweetheart. He sees something his brother has, something another man has, and he takes it. It's not about love, it's about winning. I heard a chair creak, then footsteps. You're wrong, Sarah said. Jamie's different with me. He needs me. He needs you to prove he's better than Danny. Once he's won, once he's proven his point, how long do you think it'll be before he gets bored and moves on to the next challenge? The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I slipped back out of the building and sat in my truck, processing what I'd learned. Jamie wasn't just a cheating brother. He was a serial homewrecker who got off on taking what belonged to other men. And Sarah was just his latest conquest, too blinded by attention and flattery to see she was being used. But Rebecca's words had planted a seed of doubt. I could hear it in Sarah's voice, the uncertainty creeping in. Maybe there was a way to use that. I drove home to my empty house and spent the rest of the night planning. By morning, I had a strategy that would destroy them all, but I'd need help, and I knew exactly who to call. Emma was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, eating cereal and scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Dad, Save it," I said, pouring myself coffee. "I heard what you said last night, about Uncle Jamie being a real man." Her cheeks flushed red. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. And you know what? You're right. Jamie is more of a man than me. He takes what he wants without caring who gets hurt. He lies and cheats and steals, and people love him for it." I sat down across from her, and she flinched at whatever she saw in my eyes. "But here's the thing about real men, Emma. When you back them into a corner, they don't just roll over and die. They fight back." "Dad, you're scaring me." "Good," I said. "Because you should be scared. You chose your side last night. You chose your mother and Jamie over me. That's fine. You're old enough to make that choice. But choices have consequences." I stood up and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, and Emma, you might want to start looking for a new place to live. This house is in my name, and I'm thinking of selling it." I left her sitting there with her mouth open and drove to my office. I had calls to make and plans to set in motion. It was time to show my family what a real man looked like when he decided to stop playing nice. My construction office was a double-wide trailer on the outskirts of town, surrounded by equipment and building supplies. It wasn't much to look at, but it was mine, built with my sweat, my blood, and my refusal to give up when things got tough. Unlike some people I could mention. I sat behind my desk and opened my laptop, pulling up the screenshots I'd taken of Sarah and Jamie's messages. 8 months of betrayal, documented in explicit detail. Every lie, every secret meeting, every cruel joke at my expense. It was enough to destroy them both, but I wanted to be smart about it. I started with the finances. Sarah and I had joint bank accounts, joint credit cards, joint everything. As of this morning, I was freezing it all. I called the bank first. "Hi, this is Daniel Mitchell. I need to report suspicious activity on my accounts." 20 minutes later, every account was frozen pending investigation. Sarah wouldn't be able to access a dime without my signature. I felt the first spark of satisfaction I'd experienced in days. Next, I called Emma's college. "Hi, I need to speak to someone about my daughter's tuition payments. I need to cancel the automatic withdrawals." "Is there a problem, Mr. Mitchell?" "Family emergency. I need to reassess our financial situation." Another small victory. Emma wanted to play adult games. She could deal with adult consequences. Then I made the call I'd been saving for last. "Murphy's Bar." "Tom, it's Danny. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves a camera and Jamie's big mouth. You said he's been bragging about Sarah in your bar?" There was a pause. "Danny, I don't like where this is going." "Just hear me out. Jamie likes to run his mouth when he's drunk, right? And you've got security cameras behind the bar?" "Yeah, but I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. Just, if Jamie happens to come in tonight and starts bragging about fucking his brother's wife, and if your security system happens to be working, well, that's just coincidence, right?" Tom sighed. "You're playing with fire, Danny." "They already burned my house down, Tom. I'm just making sure they don't get away clean." That evening, I sat in my truck across from Murphy's and waited. Jamie's Mustang pulled into the parking lot at 8:30, right on schedule. My brother was nothing if not predictable. I gave him an hour to get drunk and loose-tongued, then walked into the bar. Jamie was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by his usual crowd of losers and hangers-on. His voice carried across the room, slurred with whiskey and arrogance. "Best thing that ever happened to me," he was saying. "Sarah's got class, you know, not like these local girls who think Applebee's is fine dining." "What about Danny?" someone asked. "Isn't he your brother?" Jamie laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. Danny's a fucking loser. Always has been. You should have seen him when we were kids, crying every time Dad raised his voice, running to Mommy when the bigger kids picked on him. Sarah told me she's been miserable for years, just waiting for a real man to come along. I ordered a beer from Tom, who gave me a warning look. I ignored it and moved closer to Jamie's table. "She says Danny's pathetic in bed," Jamie continued, his voice getting louder. "Can't satisfy a woman, doesn't even try. She fakes it just to get it over with." The rage building in my chest was white hot. but I kept my face neutral. This was exactly what I needed, Jamie destroying himself with his own words. "So what's the plan?" one of his friends asked. "You gonna marry her?" "Maybe," Jamie said with a shrug. "She's good for now. Great in bed, makes good money, and she worships me like I'm some kind of god. But marriage?" He laughed again. "We'll see. I'm not in any hurry to tie myself down." There it was. Rebecca had been right. Sarah was just another conquest to Jamie, another way to prove he was better than his older brother. The irony was delicious. I finished my beer and left without saying a word. Tom would make sure I got a copy of that recording. The next morning, I put Phase 2 into motion. I called Sarah's law office. "Chen and Associates." "Rebecca, it's Danny Mitchell." There was a pause. "Danny, how are you holding up?" "I've been better. Listen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." "How long have you known about Sarah and Jamie?" Rebecca sighed. "Danny." "Just answer the question, Rebecca. How long?" "From the beginning. Sarah told me everything." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "It wasn't my place. Sarah's my friend and my business partner. I couldn't betray her confidence." "But you could let me be humiliated for 8 months?" "I tried to talk her out of it," Rebecca said defensively. "I told her it was a mistake, that she was going to destroy her marriage and her family, but she wouldn't listen." "Because she was in love?" "Because she was flattered. Jamie made her feel young and desirable again. She lost her head." I smiled grimly. Rebecca was giving me everything I needed without realizing it. "Well, thanks for the honesty," I said. "I appreciate it." "Danny, wait. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give my wife exactly what she deserves." I hung up and made my next call. The local newspaper was a small operation, but they had a website and a social media presence. And the editor, Mike Sullivan, owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his roof for half price after a storm tore through last winter. "Mike, it's Danny Mitchell. Remember that favor you owe me?" "Sure, Danny. What do you need?" "I've got a story for you about corruption in the local legal system." "What kind of corruption?" "The kind where lawyers sleep with their clients' husbands and then handle their divorce cases. Conflict of interest, I think they call it." There was a pause. "Are we talking about Sarah?" "I'm not naming names, but I've got documentation, messages, photos, recorded conversations, everything you'd need to verify the story." "Jesus, Danny, are you sure you want to do this?" "Mike, my wife has been cheating on me with my brother for 8 months. My parents knew and didn't tell me. My daughter thinks I'm a joke. My brother's been bragging about it in bars around town. I'm past caring about what I should or shouldn't do. Send me what you've got. I'll take a look." I emailed the folder right then. Screenshots of texts between Sarah and Jamie, hotel receipts from the Pine Ridge Inn, a voice memo Jamie had drunkenly sent to a buddy bragging about taking Danny's wife for a spin, even a photo of them kissing in Jamie's truck that one of his so-called friends had anonymously forwarded to me weeks ago. That afternoon, I got a call from Sarah. Her voice was panicked, barely controlled. "Danny, what did you do? I can't access any of our accounts." "I protected our assets," I said calmly. "Seemed like the responsible thing to do, given the circumstances." "You can't just freeze everything. I have bills to pay, a business to run." "Should have thought of that before you started fucking my brother." "Danny, please. We need to talk about this like adults." "Adults?" I laughed. "Adults don't cheat on their spouses. Adults don't lie for 8 months. Adults don't humiliate their families in front of the whole town." "I know I hurt you, but you didn't hurt me, Sarah. You destroyed me. There's a difference." "What do you want? Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you want if you'll just be reasonable about this." "I don't want your money, Sarah. I want justice." I hung up and sat back in my chair, feeling more satisfied than I had in months. Phase 3 was about to begin, and it was going to be beautiful. By tomorrow, everyone in Old Timber would know exactly what kind of woman Sarah Mitchell really was, and my dear brother Jamie was going to learn that some victories came with a price he couldn't afford to pay. The war had officially begun. Mike called back that evening. "Danny, this is dynamite. I ran it past our legal guy. He says it's solid. We're going front page tomorrow, online tonight. You sure you're okay with your name attached?" "Use it. I want them to know who blew the whistle." The article dropped at 8 p.m. Local attorney accused of ethics violation in high-profile divorce case. No names were redacted. Photos included a blurry one of Sarah and Jamie at a bar downtown, arms around each other. The piece detailed the conflict of interest, the financial transfers, the timeline of the affair, all backed by documents I'd provided. Social media exploded. By midnight, the story had been shared county-wide. My phone lit up with texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old neighbor. Danny, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. High school buddy. Man, that's cold. You okay? Even my cousin in Portland. Saw the article. Proud of you for speaking up. I didn't reply to any of them. I was too busy watching Jamie's world implode in real time. He called at 2 a.m., voice slurred. You son of a bitch. You ruined me. You ruined yourself, Jamie. You couldn't keep it in your pants, and you couldn't keep your mouth shut about it. People are calling me a homewrecker. My boss wants to talk to me tomorrow. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Good. Maybe now they'll stop pretending this was all some harmless fun. He laughed, bitter. You think this makes you a hero? You're just a bitter loser who can't keep his wife. I kept my dignity, I said. That's more than you can say. I blocked his number. Sarah's firm suspended her pending investigation by the state bar. Clients started dropping like flies. By Friday, her office was dark, the sign still up, but the blinds closed. Word was she was holed up at her sister's place in the next county. My parents tried to reach me. I didn't answer. They'd chosen silence over truth for 8 months. They could live with the consequences now. Lily came home from college for the weekend. She sat on the porch steps with me, eyes red. Dad, I read the article. I'm sorry you had to see it like that. She shook her head. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I thought you were just jealous or something. I should have listened. I put my arm around her. You're young. You trusted your mom. That's not your fault. We sat in silence for a long time. The crickets were loud that night. I'm staying with you, she said finally. I don't want to go back to Mom's, not for a while. I nodded. You're always welcome here. The divorce finalized 3 months later. Sarah got nothing. No alimony, no house, no retirement split. The judge cited her misconduct and the ethics complaint. Jamie lost his job at the mill after the story made rounds in the break room. He moved to Reno, chasing construction work. Last I heard, he was living in a trailer park. I kept the house, sold the extra land to pay off the mortgage, started a small carpentry business, custom furniture mostly. People in town still talk about the story, but they talk to me with respect now. I'm not the cuckolded husband anymore. I'm the guy who stood up. Sarah tried to apologize once through email. I deleted it unread. Sometimes I drive past her old office. The sign's gone now, replaced by a real estate agency. I don't feel joy. I don't feel anger. I just feel done. I rebuilt, piece by piece. With Lily's help, with new friends who didn't know the old me, with work that makes my hands ache in a good way. Betrayal took everything from me once, but it couldn't take my spine, and that's the only thing that matters. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Mike Sullivan had done his homework, verifying every detail before publishing. The headline read, Local Attorney Accused of Ethics Violations in Extramarital Affair. It was professional, factual, and absolutely devastating. Within hours, the story was everywhere. The newspaper's website crashed from traffic. Social media exploded with comments and shares. By noon, Sarah's law office was fielding calls from reporters and potential clients demanding answers. I was installing new windows at the Henderson place when my phone started buzzing. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. Then Jamie called, then my mother, then Emma. I ignored them all and focused on my work, humming under my breath for the first time in months. At lunch, I drove to Murphy's for a sandwich and found the place buzzing with conversations that stopped when I walked in, replaced by a mixture of sympathy and uncomfortable silence. Tom slid a beer across the bar without being asked. You've got balls, Danny. I'll give you that. Just tired of being the joke, I said, taking a long drink. Well, you're not the joke anymore. Sarah's office is in chaos. Rebecca's been fielding calls all morning, trying to do damage control, and Jamie... Tom shook his head. Jamie's been calling around town, trying to find out who talked to the reporter. Any luck? None. Mike protected his sources like a professional. Jamie's going crazy, trying to figure out how his private conversations became public knowledge. I smiled and took another drink. Funny how that works. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Family meeting tonight at Mom and Dad's. 7 p.m. Don't be a coward. It was from Jamie. The little bastard was calling me a coward after 8 months of sneaking around behind my back. The irony was rich. I texted back, I'll be there. At 6:30, I drove to my parents' house for what I knew would be the final confrontation. Jamie's Mustang was already in the driveway, along with Sarah's Honda. They were circling the wagons, preparing for one last attempt to make me the villain in their story. I walked in without knocking and found them all in the living room. My parents on the couch, Sarah in the armchair, and Jamie pacing by the window like a caged animal. They all looked up when I entered, and the hatred in Jamie's eyes was almost palpable. "There he is," Jamie snarled. "The vindictive piece of shit who just destroyed 3 people's lives." "3?" I asked, settling into the remaining chair. "I count 2, you and Sarah, unless Mom and Dad were in on the cheating too." "That's enough," Dad said sharply. "We're here to fix this mess, not make it worse." "Fix it?" I laughed. "How exactly do you propose to fix 8 months of betrayal and lies?" "By acting like adults," Mom said. "By putting the family first." "The family?" I looked around the room at these people who shared my blood, but felt like strangers. Which family are we talking about? The one where my brother fucks my wife, or the one where my parents help cover it up? "We never helped cover anything up," Dad protested. "You knew about it for months and said nothing. That's not covering up." Sarah spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. "Danny, I know you're angry." "Angry?" I turned to face her, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with. "I'm not angry, Sarah. I'm done. There's a difference." "The newspaper story was cruel and unnecessary," she continued. "You've humiliated me professionally, destroyed my reputation, and for what? Revenge?" "Justice," I corrected. "You're a lawyer who was sleeping with a client's family member while handling potential divorce proceedings. That's an ethics violation, and you know it." "I never handled your case. We're not even divorced yet." "But you were planning to, weren't you? You and Rebecca had it all figured out. How much you'd take me for, how you'd spin the narrative to make me look like the bad husband who drove his wife into another man's arms." The silence that followed told me I'd hit the mark. Jamie stopped pacing and turned to face me. "You always were a vindictive bastard. Even when we were kids, you couldn't stand to lose." "Lose?" I stood up, and Jamie instinctively took a step back. "I didn't lose anything, Jamie. You stole it. There's a difference between losing a game and having someone cheat." "I didn't steal anything. Sarah came to me. Because you've been circling her like a vulture for 5 years, waiting for your chance. You think I didn't notice the comments, the looks, the way you always found excuses to touch her?" "She wanted me to touch her." The admission hung in the air like a confession. Sarah's face went white, and I saw her realize what Jamie had just revealed. 5 years?" she whispered. "You've been planning this for 5 years?" Jamie's face flushed red as he realized his mistake. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" I asked quietly. "Tell her, Jamie. Tell Sarah about Kelly Morrison, about Lisa Chen, about your pattern of taking what belongs to other men." "Shut up," Jamie warned. "Tell her how you get bored once the chase is over. Tell her how you bragged to your friends that she was good for now, but you weren't in any hurry to marry her." I said, "Shut up." "Tell her how you called me pathetic and said she was just waiting for a real man to come along." Jamie lunged at me, but I was ready. 5 years of construction work had kept me strong, and 36 years of dealing with my brother's bullshit had taught me to see his moves coming. I caught his swing and twisted his arm behind his back, forcing him to his knees. "Get off him," Sarah screamed, but she made no move to help. "This is what your real man looks like," I told her, applying just enough pressure to make Jamie whimper. "A coward who sucker punches people and cries when someone fights back." I released him and stepped away. Jamie scrambled to his feet, his face red with humiliation and rage. "You're going to pay for this," he snarled. "Both of you are going to pay." "Both of us?" Sarah asked. "You think I'm going down alone? You think I'm going to let you pretend you were some innocent victim in all this?" Jamie's mask was finally slipping, revealing the selfish, vindictive man underneath. "You chased me just as hard as I chased you. You begged me to leave Danny and be with you. You said you'd do anything to make me happy." Sarah's face crumpled as she realized the truth. Jamie didn't love her. He'd never loved her. She'd been a conquest, a way to hurt me, and now that the game was over, he was ready to throw her away. "Jamie," Mom said weakly, "that's enough." "No, it's not enough." Jamie turned on our parents with the fury of a spoiled child who'd finally been told no. "You two are just as pathetic as he is. Always trying to keep the peace, always making excuses, always pretending we're some kind of happy family when we all hate each other." The truth was finally coming out. All the resentment, all the jealousy, all the poison that had been festering in our family for decades was spilling into the open. "I've spent my whole life competing with the golden boy," I said quietly, "watching you give him everything while I had to earn scraps. But you know what? I'm grateful, because it taught me to be strong. It taught me to build something real instead of just taking what other people built." I looked around the room one last time, memorizing the faces of the people who'd betrayed me. I'm done with all of you, I said. Sarah, you'll be hearing from my lawyer about the divorce. Don't expect me to make it easy. Jamie, stay away from me and stay away from my property. Mom, Dad, I hope he was worth losing a son over. I walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Jamie, you might want to check your precious Mustang. Karma's a bitch. I left them sitting in the wreckage of their lies and drove home to pack. I'd already found a small apartment across town, far enough away to avoid the daily reminders of my old life. As I loaded my belongings into my truck, I heard a distant sound that made me smile. Jamie, screaming in rage as he discovered what I'd done to his car. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but expensive enough to hurt. And perfectly legal, since the car was parked on a public street. The war was over. I'd lost my wife, my family, and my home, but I'd won something more valuable, my self-respect. And sometimes that's enough. I drove away from Old Timber that night and never looked back. Behind me, I left a town full of people who'd learned too late that every action has consequences, and some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt.